Welcome to the debate. What if the emptiness you feel after success is not proof that you failed, but proof that success was never meant to carry your whole life?
Yeah, it really is, well, the ultimate modern paradox, isn't it? I mean, you see these high-performing founders and executives who have, on paper, completely engineered the perfect life.
Right?
The corner office,
Exactly.
the massive revenue streams, the industry influence. They've built the exact team they always dreamed of leading. But then, when the laptop finally snaps shut at 11 p.m., they're sitting in this quiet, crushing reality.
Just total exhaustion.
Yeah, there is this profound internal emptiness. They are deeply disconnected from their families, completely burned out, and frankly, entirely incapable of actually enjoying the empire they spent a decade building.
And, that exact disconnect is what really grounds our conversation today. We're looking at the work of Mousaab Khaldi. He's an executive coach who addresses this specific crisis through his 4 interior empires methodology, which is mindset, Heartset, Healthset, and Soulset.
Right, the 4 empires.
Yes, and his core premise is that high achievement without a solid internal foundation is, well, it's essentially suicide in slow motion, and he knows this intimately.
Oh, his personal story is wild.
It really is. By age 20, he had invested over 300,000 pounds into fragmented self-development. I mean, therapy, executive coaching, luxury retreats.
All the standard executive fixes.
Exactly. Yet he was still so fundamentally misaligned that he literally collapsed unconscious for 55 minutes. His nervous system just forced a hard reset. So his response to that collapse was to build a strictly structured neuroscience-backed architecture to integrate the leader from the inside out.
Right, and I think, look, everyone can agree on the reality of that executive exhaustion. Where this material creates a fascinating tension, though, is in its actual prescription.
The mechanism.
Yeah, the mechanism. Overcoming that profound emptiness is deeply necessary, obviously. But I fundamentally question the mechanism Khaldi uses to get there. Because, we are talking by taking an already overwhelmed, isolated leader and handing them a highly rigid, aggressive 12-day optimization roadmap.
But that structure is exactly what they need.
Well, I don't know. Applying strict performance schedules to inner peace, it really risks turning human wholeness into just another corporate KPI. I really look at this and think, the true, deeper value of executive coaching isn't giving a founder another 5 a.m. performance sprint.
Right, but
It's about providing a private, completely unstructured space to just drop the armor and actually notice their own inner misalignment.
okay, I hear that. But look at what happens when they actually try to fix that emptiness without structure. The source material captures this brilliantly. They try to fix their minds, but leave their hearts completely armored.
Right, the fragmentation issue.
Exactly. If you pursue mindset work without heartset work, you might get incredibly sharp and focused, sure. But you develop this cold confidence that just alienates your entire executive team.
That is fair.
And if you pursue health without Soulset, you end up with great physical vitality, but you're still sprinting toward a completely meaningless finish line. Khaldi spent a fortune on isolated interventions like 50,000 pounds on therapy, 120,000 on coaching.
Just treating the symptoms, basically.
Right, and he remained entirely fragmented because he lacked a unifying daily architecture. You can't just sit a burned-out CEO in a quiet room and tell them to, reflect. You actually have to systematically rewire their prefrontal cortex.
Well, I am right there with you on the dangers of fragmented development. Doing a yoga retreat on a weekend and then returning to a toxic 80-hour work week doesn't fix anything.
Not at all.
But let's really think about the psychological profile of the leaders we're discussing here. These are individuals who are chronically exhausted by crushing targets. They're trapped in relentless schedules, spending their entire day reacting to fires.
Which is why they need a new system.
But to tell that specific person that they must strictly, own your first hour at 5 a.m., complete with intense physical activation and scheduled journaling, or they will fail to achieve wholeness. Doesn't that sound dangerously close to the exact hustle culture that broke them in the first place?
I can see how it sounds like that.
It just feels like we are asking a drowning person to simply swim faster and, with much better technique, rather than just pulling them out of the water.
Okay, I love the drowning analogy, but it sounds like hustle culture only if you look at the surface. biologically, it is something entirely different. We have to look at the mechanics of a highly driven brain under stress.
Okay, let's look at the biology.
Right. So when a founder is operating with cortisol levels sitting at 78 nanograms per millimeter, we aren't just talking about them feeling a little stressed. Biologically, their amygdala is sounding a massive fire alarm.
Their whole system is hijacked.
Exactly. The brain is actively diverting blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex, which, is the logic and empathy center, and pushing it towards survival and threat response centers. So sitting that person in an unstructured, quiet, safe space, it's like whispering to someone inside a burning building.
Because they can't even hear you over the alarm.
Yes, their brain will just spin on business problems. The strict 5 a.m. 20-20-20 protocol, move, reflect, learn, is a biological intervention. It's designed to put the fire out before they even try to think.
Okay, so I understand the need to downregulate the nervous system. I really do. But why does it demand this militaristic precision? I mean, the material insists on elevating the heart rate to exactly 120 to 140 beats per minute within the first 20 minutes of waking up.
Yes, that's crucial.
But why is that specific forced metric the only way out of the burning building?
Because of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. By hitting that specific cardiovascular zone at 5 a.m., you are forcing the brain to release this incredibly powerful learning molecule.
Right, the neuroplasticity aspect.
Exactly. Think of BDNF like a biological fertilizer that clears the mental fog and drastically increases neuroplasticity. At that hour, the brain is roughly 3.8 times more receptive to rewiring. You have to physically alter the chemical state of the brain first.
So it's chemistry before psychology?
100%. Once the BDNF is flowing and the cortisol has dropped, then you can ask the executive to engage in the next 20 minutes of reflection. You're forcing the brain out of its chronic threat response before the market opens, before their inbox fills up, before the world demands a single decision from them.
Well, the biology of BDNF is well documented, I'll give you that. But my issue is how this mechanical approach is applied to the emotional realm. Let's look at what happens next in that strict morning routine.
The Heartset protocol.
Yeah, Khaldi's schedule dictates that from 6 a.m. to 6:15 a.m., the executive must lock in their Heartset. That is 15 minutes of scheduled heart-brain coherence.
Which is incredibly effective.
But listen to what that actually means. You are essentially asking a guarded leader to process their deepest emotional armor, to genuinely feel sadness or anger or chronic loneliness in a rigidly scheduled 15-minute window before the timer goes off and they have to move on to learning.
It creates a container.
It paradoxically schedules authenticity. How can you possibly mandate genuine vulnerability on a stopwatch?
Because the time constraint is exactly what creates the safety to open up in the first place. Think about it from the perspective of a highly analytical CEO. If you give them an open-ended mandate to just, feel their feelings, what do?
They probably avoid it.
They actively resist it because it feels like an endless, unquantifiable void. But if you tell them, listen, we are going to do this for exactly 15 minutes and then you are done, that boundary provides permission. And again, this is deeply rooted in physical mechanics. The heart has over 40,000 intrinsic neurons.
Right, it's a sensory organ?
Yes, it has its own nervous system that communicates directly with the amygdala via the vagus nerve.
Okay, but how does 15 minutes of coherence actually translate into, better leadership?
Well, think of the brain and the heart like two different processors in a highly complex computer network. When a leader is panicked, those processors are running out of sync. They are sending conflicting code back and forth, which causes the entire system to lag.
Which manifests as decision fatigue.
Exactly. That is what decision fatigue actually is. Scheduled heart-brain coherence is like running a daily synchronization script, so both processors are communicating seamlessly. The data in the material shows this coherence increases decision quality by 2.7 times.
2.7 times.
Right. So the 6 a.m. protocol isn't about perfectly resolving childhood trauma in 15 minutes. It is a mechanical rehearsal. By synchronizing the nervous system in private, you rewire the baseline so that when the executive is standing in front of their team at 2 p.m., their authenticity and calm are natural, not forced.
So
We are practicing emotional vulnerability in order to improve decision quality by 2.7 times.
Among other things, yes.
And that right there brings us to my absolute deepest concern with this entire methodology. I absolutely acknowledge the brilliance of identifying the four empires and pointing out that external success cannot carry your whole life.
Glad we agree on that.
But look at the metrics being used to validate this inner integration. The material proudly boasts that within the 12-day installation phase, founders experience a 147% improvement in cognitive function, a 172% increase in emotional regulation, and a 71% increase in business performance.
Incredible results.
But are we not simply using the language of inner peace to biohack the soul for capitalism?
I see why you view it that way. I really do. But let me offer a completely different framework for those metrics. You have to speak the language of the person you were trying to save.
Meaning you just feed them more of what they're already addicted to?
No. Meaning you use the tools of the capitalist brain to trick it into saving its own soul. Ambitious founders are conditioned to track KPIs, quarterly revenue, and growth percentages. That is their native tongue.
True. They live in spreadsheets.
Right. So if you want a highly guarded, deeply cynical CEO to sit down, do breath work, and confront their profound feelings of unworthiness, you cannot just offer them esoteric concepts about finding their inner light.
Oh, they would laugh you out of the room.
Exactly. They will reject it outright as a waste of time. You have to offer them the empirical data, a 134% improvement in prefrontal cortex activation and a massive reduction in stress hormones. The metrics are a Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse, okay. But what is actually inside the Trojan horse? Because if the container is entirely framed around competitive advantage and optimization, I worry the identity shift never actually happens.
It absolutely happens.
But the program explicitly gamifies the human psyche. Day 1 is mindset, day 4 is Heartset, day 7 is Healthset. Day 3, cognitive empire lock. I mean, it reads like a software installation manual for the human spirit.
That's the point. It's systematic.
And the material proudly cites an 80% dropout rate during the early phase, explicitly telling the founder, and I quote, "Most quit here, you won't." That is pure motivation through competitive ego.
Well,
It utilizes their existing drive, yes, but it completely redirects the trajectory. Let's talk about why 80% of people want to drop out in those first few days. It is not because they lack discipline, and it's not just a marketing gimmick.
So what is it then? It is because of homeostatic resistance. Their nervous systems are literally addicted to high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. When this protocol forces those stress hormones to drop, the body interprets that newfound peace as a dangerous threat.
Like a physical withdrawal.
Exactly. The executive physically goes through withdrawal symptoms. They feel agitated, exhausted, and they're just desperate to check their email to get a hit of stress. So the rigid, gamified structure, the specific days, the checkboxes, the competitive framing is the only guardrail strong enough to keep them on the path while they go through biological withdrawal.
I understand the concept of cortisol withdrawal. It's very real. But I still question whether you can truly build the Soulset empire, which, let's remember, is supposed to be about meaning, legacy, and self-worth, while maintaining that aggressive, gamified posture.
But that posture changes over time.
I just feel like if the ultimate goal is moving from ego-driven success to genuine wholeness, you eventually have to stop treating your spiritual alignment as something to be, locked in for a 71% revenue boost.
And they do stop. That is the brilliance of the sequence. Once the biological guardrails have stabilized their nervous system, the paradigm completely shifts. You mentioned the Soulset. This happens on day 10.
Right, the mortality meditation.
Yes. They are introduced to the mortality meditation. And this isn't about metrics. The executive sits quietly and is asked to vividly visualize that they have exactly 6 months left to live.
Heavy stuff.
It is. But when you do that with a brain that is finally clear of cortisol fog, the KPIs suddenly evaporate. The questions shift entirely. What impact do I want to leave? Who do I actually want to serve? What would I build if money was completely irrelevant? The business shifts from being their entire identity to simply being a vehicle for their true purpose.
Look, a meditation on mortality is powerful. I will grant you that.
And we have concrete proof that this identity shift works in the real world. Let's look at the case study of Zakaria El-Wahavi from the material.
Oh yeah, the 70-hour work week guy.
Right. Before this structured integration, he was grinding through 78-hour weeks. He was trapped in the exact emptiness we're talking about. But he implemented this architecture. By doing so, he cut unnecessary meetings by 38%, he started delegating decisively, and his hours dropped from 78 down to 52.
And revenue still grew, what, 22%?
Exactly. Revenue still grew 22%. But the most crucial metric, the one that actually matters, was that he was finally coming home with physical and emotional energy left for his family. The strict daily architecture is exactly what bought back the time to be present in his own life.
See, I love the outcome of the Zakaria case study. Truly. But I interpret the mechanism of his success completely differently than you do.
How so?
Well, you are pointing to the 20-20-20 protocol and the scheduled efficiencies as the savior. I argue that the most important outcome, coming home with energy for his family, proves my point entirely.
Wait, how does that prove your point?
Because that energy didn't magically appear just because he took a cold plunge at 5 a.m. It came from dropping the psychological armor at the office. The material notes that true integration asks leaders to share real struggles with their team, right? To ask for help on things they've been avoiding and to admit mistakes openly.
Exactly, which is the core of the Day 6 Heartset protocol.
But the discipline to be vulnerable is a byproduct of a new identity, not the cause of it. Think about what a 78-hour workweek actually is. It's not just doing tasks. It is constant firefighting, micromanaging, and terrified hypervigilance.
It's exhausting.
Right. It takes an immense amount of caloric and emotional energy to constantly pretend you have all the answers. When a leader moves from a scarcity mindset to one of service and abundance, which called the Outlines and the Day 11 Service Protocol, where leaders mentor without any expectation of a return, their nervous system naturally downregulates.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, they aren't exhausted at the end of the day because they simply stop fighting themselves. They don't need a 90-minute hyper-regimented routine to hold them together once they dismantle the facade. The true transformation is letting go, not locking in.
I hear what you're saying, but letting go requires a foundation of physical and cognitive capacity. You are separating the psychology from the biology, which is the exact definition of the fragmentation Khaldi warns against.
I wouldn't call it fragmentation.
But it is. You say a leader just needs to stop fighting themselves and drop the armor. But how on earth can a CEO drop their psychological armor if their physical body is running on 4 hours of broken sleep and their adrenaline is continually spiking?
Well, obviously, sleep matters.
Right. And on days 7 through 9, the Healthset empire locks in the physical realities, movement protocols, sleep setups, strict boundaries like lights out by 10:15 p.m. You cannot sustain vulnerable, authentic leadership if you are biologically depleted. The 90 minutes of daily architecture is the physical anchor that makes the psychological letting go possible.
Look, I am certainly not arguing against the value of sleep or physical health. I am arguing against the commodification of human wholeness. When we package sleep, vulnerability, and life purpose into a 12 days to unbreakable leadership sprint, we are speaking to the grade A high achiever in the exact toxic language they use to punish themselves.
I think punish is a strong word.
But the material literally says, decisions become automatic. Your competitive advantage becomes unfair. We are selling inner peace as a competitive weapon. I believe an executive coach must interrupt that entire behavioral pattern, not leverage it. A true safe space allows a leader to realize they don't need an unfair competitive advantage anymore. They just need to be human.
I view it less as commodification and more as, practical translation. The goal of the 4 Empires coaching is to meet the executive exactly where they're standing right now.
Even if where they're standing is unhealthy?
Yes, because if they currently value competitive advantage above all else, you show them how emotional regulation and clear purpose provide exactly that. But the end state, the actual destination after this rigorous 12-day installation and the subsequent 66-day deepening phase, is a leader who is no longer reactive, no longer armored, and no longer chasing empty success to fill a void.
That is the hope, yes.
They become commanding. authentic, sustained, and driven by meaningful impact. The rigorous architecture is just the temporary bridge to get them across the chasm.
And my enduring fear is that by building that bridge out of the exact same materials as the chasm, metrics, optimization, rigid schedules, and competitive framing, they might never actually cross over. They might just build a much more efficient, highly optimized 5 a.m. version of their own isolation.
I suppose that's the risk they take.
But I will concede this point entirely. Khaldi's fundamental premise that empires are not built in isolation but through internal integration is undeniable. We both firmly agree that the pursuit of external achievement without a deep internal foundation of mindset, Heartset, Healthset, and Soulset is a recipe for an eventual collapse.
We definitely agree on that. Ambition is an incredibly valuable force. I mean, it drives human innovation, it builds remarkable teams, and it creates massive impact on the world.
Absolutely.
But ambition without integration is what leads to that $300,000 collapse. It is what leads to leaders sitting in corner offices feeling completely disconnected from the very lives they sacrificed everything to build.
Yeah. And we both share a mutual understanding that success, at its core, must feel whole. Where we remain in respectful tension is simply the path to achieving that wholeness. You see the rigorous neurological protocols and scheduled coherence as the necessary scaffolding to save an overwhelmed leader from their own biological stress responses.
And you believe that wholeness is best achieved by intentionally dismantling those metric-driven architectures that isolate leaders in the first place, allowing vulnerability and purpose to emerge organically in a space completely free of performance demands.
Precisely. It is a profound paradox that every ambitious professional must navigate for themselves. How do you achieve greatness in the external world without losing the internal capacity to actually feel it?
It is a tension that leaves us with much to explore in our own lives and much more to unpack within this material. So we leave you, our listeners, with this final reflection to carry with you. What have you achieved that you still struggle to fully enjoy?
If this conversation helps you see something more clearly, take the free 4 Empires assessment at mousaabkhaldi.com/assessment. And if you would like a private conversation about your leadership, business, or personal direction, you can book a free discovery call with Mousaab Khaldi at mousaabkhaldi.com.